Hello, MCU fans! Today we're going to take a look at everything you need to know before watching Marvel Zombies in just a few short days. We're going to look at every one of their appearances, and there will be spoilers for those appearances, but as long as you're okay with that, then let's dive right in and see what we can find out. Don't forget, we have a September contest running all month long. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, you could win a book or a steelbook. Best of luck. And we have a membership option with lots of cool perks, so you might check it out in case you're interested. Plus, hang around to the end of the video, and I'll talk about the Doomsday Countdown rewatch on the Discord. All right, so the most important episode to discuss is What If Season 1, Episode 5, the Marvel Zombies episode, right? So I'm actually going to start with what we learned happened 2 weeks earlier, and that was that Dr. Hank Pym journeyed into the quantum realm searching for his long-lost wife. Now, the timeline book tells us that happens around spring of 2018 timeframe, and of course, in the Sacred Timeline, there was a nice, wonderful reunion with the Ant family. However, it did not go quite so well in this What If episode, because in this universe, Janet Van Dyne contracted a quantum virus that corrupted her brain. All right, so the first question to ask is, how do you get a branch in the quantum realm? I mean, keep in mind, Marvel themselves had an interview with Quantumania producer Stephen Broussard and writer Jeff Loveness. And Loveness said, we really wanted to build it, the quantum realm, from the ground up, and we thought, how do we make this different from just outer space? And how do we make it different from underwater, like Namor's kingdom Talokan? We came up with the idea that basically, it's like the basement of the multiverse. It's this connected limbo outside of space and time. Okay, so that means there's only one quantum realm for the entire multiverse, because it's the basement of the multiverse. So how do you get a branch in that? Well, I think the biggest hint comes from the movie itself. Remember the scene in Quantumania where Scott saw his variants? In fact, he saw every choice he could make existing all at once, including the hilarious choice where he remained a Baskin-Robbins employee for life. Well, this was because he was standing next to the multiversal engine core, but I think what this shows is you can branch in the quantum realm, but it doesn't branch the realm, it just branches you, and you're basically out of phase with your variants. So that means the Janet from the Sacred Timeline and the, well, zombie Janet both existed in the same quantum realm. They were just out of phase with each other. And it was only standing next to that multiversal engine core where you could see your variants. But anyway, that's the best explanation I can come up with. If you have a different one, please let me know. Nonetheless, we now see Janet and Hank returning back to the Ant family, but it does not go well because Hank is on the attack. Now, luckily, Hope is able to get away, but not so much for Scott. So we'll see him again in a moment. But for now, he is out of the picture. All right, so then we see that the virus quickly spread. The Watcher says within 24 hours, the entire Pacific Northwest was infected. And then, ironically, it was the Avengers' heroism that sealed humanity's fate. Because in comes Hank, takes a chunk out of Cap's neck, and sure enough, once the Earth's mightiest heroes joined the infected, no one else stood a chance. So the important thing to keep in mind is, even when you become a zombie, you still have some awareness of your superpowers, and we'll see that throughout. So then we jump forward 2 weeks to when Bruce crash lands on Earth, warning that Thanos is coming. Of course, we saw this at the beginning of Infinity War, right? And in fact, there's the Black Order on the attack, but it looks like there is actually a much greater threat. Yep, because the Avengers are now zombified. There's Wong, Iron Man, and Doctor Strange, all zombies. Yikes. But I love the fact that Hope atomizes them. What a boss-level move by the ants, right? They just disintegrate the zombies. And Bruce is like, what is going on? Then Hope says, go, you'll be safe with them. The same ants that just ate the zombies. Yuck. But it's actually Spider-Man that grabs him and swings him up to a safe place that I'm assuming he has to re-web every couple hours, because his webs do ultimately dissolve. But I love their hideout there above all the zombies. All right, so then Peter gives a crash course to Bruce on how to survive the zombie apocalypse. There's 3 key steps. Step 1, long sleeves, because the zombie virus is passed through saliva. Thus, the less skin you're showing, the less there is to bite. Step number 2, zombies are attracted to the smell of human flesh. So, the less pheromones you give off, the better. And finally, step 3, always aim for the head. That's the only way to kill them. All right, so then we learn that Okoye is part of this remnant of uninfected heroes, but she's very worried about her king, King T'Challa, who went missing weeks ago. In fact, we'll see more about him in a minute. But meanwhile, they learn about another survivor camp. There's one that, in fact, has made progress on a cure. And in fact, Sharon Carter, who's with the group, explains that's Camp Lehigh in New Jersey, S.H.I.E.L.D.'s first base of operations. So yeah, they gotta head to New Jersey. So that means they need to head to Grand Central Station to hotwire a train, and it will become the last train to Lehigh. Unfortunately, while they're trying to hotwire the train, zombie Hawkeye is on the attack and takes out Happy Hogan. He almost takes out Sharon Carter, and then he makes his appearance. And we also see poor zombie Happy. Man, he turned quickly, right? But Sharon manages to take him down while she escapes zombie Hawkeye, and meanwhile, zombie Sam is taken down by Okoye. I'm not going to show it, but she literally splits him in half. And then she meekly apologizes to Bucky. That was your friend. I'm sorry about that. And I love his line, I should be sad, but I'm not. He has some of the best one-liners in this episode. Anyway, we now see that Doctor Strange's cape becomes an MVP because it actually saves Peter as he's hotwiring the train, but also makes him look darn spiffy, right? But we'll see that cape continuing to be helpful throughout the episode. But then, bad news, zombie Cap has managed to get onto the train, and in fact, he's infected Sharon Carter, but it's Bucky who ultimately takes out zombie Cap by, well, cutting him in half with his own shield, and then another one-liner, sorry pal, I guess this is the end of the line. Meanwhile, zombie Sharon is taken down by Hope, who enters her mouth and then grows to full size, exploding her all over the place. However, Hope learns some bad news. Her costume was cut and she is infected, so she will eventually become a zombie herself. But that's not all the bad news, because now the train has run out of fuel and they have to walk through all of that. Well, Hope decides to make the final sacrifice. She puts everyone in her hands and walks through the zombies, punting them out of the way, and then she gently sets them over the fence safely at Camp Lehigh as she falls down to her final fate. But what they discover is there's actually holes in the fence, but something is keeping the zombies at bay. It turns out it's Vision. They're so happy to see Vision, and he explains to them the Mind Stone, the source of, well, me? It emits a subfrequency that is not to their liking. Okay, interesting. So that may be part of the cure. In fact, we learn that he's been experimenting on a cure because he has managed to save, well, part of Scott, Scott's head at least. And he drops so many hilarious dad jokes. He's like, I know, I've lost weight. Probably my favorite part of the episode is him. I really hope we get to see him in Marvel Zombies. But Vision gives him the bad news. Yes, there's a cure, but there's also a catch. Sure, I cured him, if you can consider that cured, but to perfect the cure, it's currently beyond human capacity. But Okoye jumps in, not in Wakanda, and thanks to our force shields, it remains the last human sanctuary on Earth. So okay, they just need to get to Wakanda. So Bucky goes around looking for transportation, and he finds out that Vision has a dark secret. Yes, that is zombie Wanda. He also runs across the Black Panther, who tells him the bad news. So Vision grabbed him from San Francisco, but he didn't do it to save him. He was just picking up takeout. Because it turns out Vision has been keeping T'Challa alive to feed his zombie bride. And sure enough, Vision fesses up. He says her powers are too strong. They've resisted the treatment. And the only course of action is to contain her and her hunger. But when he was asked, why didn't you just kill her? He admits he was unable to bring himself to do it. And he says, I still cannot entirely fathom what I have done. Well, they're all about to find out because zombie Wanda is on the move. And I'm really impressed that Kurt lasted as long as he did, considering he has no superpowers. But now his number is up because Wanda grabs him just as he shouts out Baba Yaga with that nice callback to, of course, Ant-Man and the Wasp. And now she is ready to kick some butt. She wants food. Well, Hulk says, look, Vision, we need your help. Get us out of here. So Vision finally decides to change course and sure enough, blasts a hole in the wall so everyone can escape. And here's where we see that the cape comes to the rescue once again, because poor Scott wouldn't have been able to get away, right? And then he drops this line. This is the most bizarre line of the episode when he says, I feel like I'm back at prom. So he wore a cape to prom? That is hilarious. Only Scott would do that. Anyway, not everyone makes it out because Okoye is not able to escape in time, and as she's pulled back in and killed by Wanda, she screams, my king, Wakanda forever. Well, then Vision decides to make the sacrifice play. He says, we haven't much time, there's a quad jet in the hangar, but he says, I cannot bring myself to leave her. However, he knows they need that Mind Stone, so he literally rips it out of his forehead, which basically kills him, and now they pick it up and they're ready to take it to Wakanda to find the cure, right? But good luck trying to stop zombie Wanda. She is so mad. Well, Bucky gives it his all, right? He does the hero play. He says run and tries to attack her, but yeah, does not fare well. Although for the record, she just chucks him away, so he probably landed with the zombies, and maybe we'll see a zombie Bucky coming up in the Marvel Zombies show. I guess we'll have to wait and see on that. But anyway, Hulk now decides, all right, I'm going to hold her back while the rest of you escape. He says, okay, big guy, kind of counting on you here. And sure enough, he does turn into the Hulk, and we get a very brief but awesome battle between him and Wanda. And I could have watched this for 20 minutes. So for the record, this is now the last in this episode that we see of either of them. So we don't know what either of their fates were. We'll have to wait for Marvel Zombies to find that out. All right. Meanwhile, the few survivors are making their escape. Scott says, we did it. We really did it. And of course, whenever you say that, one more bad thing happens because now zombie Hope grabs onto the ship, trying to stop them, but luckily they're able to blast away, and hilariously, she chucks a zombie at them in frustration. That was so funny. It just bounces off the ship as it screams. Anyway, now Scott can say, we're celebrating. He says, go ahead, high five. It's okay. I won't feel left out. I really, really hope he appears because he had epic one-liners. So they realize once we get to Wakanda, we are going to save the world. But are they? Or are they heading for an even worse fate? Because we do see the shield is still in place, but there is zombie Thanos with 5 of the 6 stones, the only one left being the Mind Stone. That's all he needs to complete the set. So the Mind Stone is both the salvation of the human race and maybe the destruction as well. So what an awesome cliffhanger ending to the episode. I do suspect the Marvel Zombies show will pick up here, but we're probably going to get a bit of a time jump because supposedly Miss Marvel is going to show up on the show. And of course, in the Sacred Timeline, she didn't get her powers until 2025. So we may see as much as a 6-7 year time jump when the show comes out. So that's it for this episode, which is the most important thing to know before watching Marvel Zombies. But let's talk about 2 more appearances of the Marvel Zombies, especially Zombie Wanda, to see if maybe they're going to tie in to Marvel Zombies. So, what if Season 1's finale, episode number 9, had the Guardians of the Multiverse, of course, and while they were fighting Infinity Ultron, Strange Supreme needed a diversion, right? Needed a distraction so they could get away. So he opens a portal above Infinity Ultron. He's like, what? This isn't good, right? And sure enough, out come a ton of zombies. Now, what's interesting is Zombie Cap, Zombie Sam, and Zombie Clint. They were all killed. We saw them each be destroyed. So my guess is this is probably a different branch of zombies and not the same ones from the Marvel Zombies episode. But, let me know your thoughts on that. But anyway, they all come dumping down on Infinity Ultron. I love that. In fact, so does Thor, because Thor says zombies. Great idea. I love zombies. But Strange Supreme is clear. There's one zombie in particular that he wants. He says it's not them. It's what came with the zombies. And yeah, even Ultron is like, wait a minute, what? Because he sees the boss herself, Zombie Wanda. I love Zombie Wanda. She is so incredible. Look at that face. She is so ticked off. She blasts Infinity Ultron. And honestly, it looks like she might be making some progress at first. I mean, he is definitely thrown back. But before long, he absorbs her blast and looks her in the eye and is like, okay, I'm not going down that easy. And she's like, uh-oh, that was my best shot. And then sure enough, Infinity Ultron literally blows up the entire planet the zombies are on. So yeah, I don't see any way that this could be the same zombies that we saw in the Marvel Zombies episode. So I'm betting that this will not tie in to the show. But let me know your thoughts on that. But an episode that could potentially cross over with Marvel Zombies is the finale of Season 2, which is episode number 9. So in that episode, Strange Supreme has been collecting villains. He invites Peggy to his citadel, and she's like, have you been here all alone? And he's like, oh, no. I have beings of untold power hell-bent on destroying their universes. So the way he captured all these villains totally reminds me of Cabin in the Woods, where they captured all these monsters, right? And by the way, if you've never seen Cabin in the Woods, you have to check it out. Perfect for Halloween, and it even stars Chris Hemsworth himself. So yeah, definitely watch that movie. But it turns out that Strange Supreme actually has an ulterior motive. Cohort T reveals that Strange isn't trying to save universes, he's trying to resurrect his, the one he destroyed in season number 1. And by the way, I have to bring this up every time, but Marvel themselves told us it's pronounced Cohorty, so I don't know where the T comes from, but that's why I'm saying it. Anyway, time to set everyone free because Peggy Carter hates this idea, does not want them all to be sacrificed, destroys their prisons, So sure enough, we have total carnage as everyone is running for their lives, but Peggy and Cohorty realize maybe this wasn't the best idea. Did you hear that? I was hoping I hadn't, because sure enough, everything turns red and they realize, oh no, not her. Yep, it is Zombie Wanda. Best zombie ever. I absolutely love her. Anyway, I thought this line was interesting because Cohorty's like, oh, I know what zombies are. They're pretty universal. So yeah, that explains that there's probably zombies in multiple branches off the sacred timeline. Anyway, Zombie Wanda decides to strike first, and in fact, she goes first after Captain Carter, who tries to block her powers with her shield, but that's not going to last long, right? So now Cohorty goes on the attack. And sure enough, blasts Zombie Wanda, and she's like, oh, really? Oh, really? You want to play? Okay, we'll play then. So while those two are duking it out up above, Peggy Carter has actually got her hands full down below, fending off the zombies. But yeah, the most important battle is up top. So it looks like at first that Wanda has the upper hand, kind of traps Cohorty with her powers, but Cohorty then realizes the best option is to send Wanda home. Because remember, her powers were based upon the Space Stone, so sure enough, she goes right after Wanda and creates a portal and seemingly sends Wanda back home again. So that's why I'm saying this episode could cross over with Marvel Zombies. I mean, wouldn't it be epic if Wanda disappears from the Marvel Zombies episode and then suddenly reappears seconds later with a look on her face like, what just happened? That would be awesome. Anyway, there is one other minor appearance by Zombie Wanda in What If, an Immersive Story. I've done a video on this if you want to check out more and learn more about it, but at the point where basically you are playing the game, that's your hands, we see several shards of reality, and one of them does include our favorite zombie, Zombie Wanda. So yeah, just a minor appearance. That's pretty much it, but I wanted to include it for completeness. So that's everything you need to know about Marvel Zombies. Are you excited for the show? Do you think it's going to tie in directly with the What If episode? And will the other two appearances in the season finales somehow tie in? I really want to know your thoughts on it. I can tell you, I'm excited about it, but I want to know what you think. You know I love to read and respond to everything. And don't forget, we have that September contest. Be a subscriber, leave a comment, win a book or a steelbook. And there's the membership option in case you're interested in that. And I always love to mention the Discord. Here we are talking about the Moon Knight Blade character and how awesome it's going to be to see him. Plus, I promised I would talk about the Doomsday Countdown rewatch, every day listed here at 7 p.m. Eastern. We'll watch a different movie or show leading up to the December 18, 2026 release of Doomsday. So we have 2,400 members across the globe, conversations 24/7, and I'll leave a pinned comment so you can join. Also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we'll all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, the ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.